can make this recap pretty quick, just for time's sake. You guys can definitely check it out on our podcast and on Facebook for the previous week. But we basically talked about darkness and addressing the fact that there's more aspects to it, I think, than just an absence of light or something that's seen as evil. It actually holds the divine presence and revelation. Like you find the Lord in the darkness. And there's multiple examples of that throughout Scripture. And then just a reminder, like he created it, he rules over it, so he uses it for transformation. And encountering God in the mystery of it, like Moses did in Exodus, where he stepped into the darkness. And that is where, the presence of the Lord was. And its darkness is like that time of, it's often used as a time for renewal. We see this all throughout, just in nature. Seeds in the soil, birth, even darkness, creation at the very beginning. It talks about the darkness first. And so it can be a waiting season, a season that can actually strengthen us and prepare us for the revelation to come. And, we talked a little bit about, the crucifixion darkness and what potentially was hidden in the mystery of that. And I think it was really fascinating, some different things that were mentioned in that. One thing was this idea that, it almost reflects the darkness at the very beginning. So creation almost mourning. And this aspect of that original darkness coming back on, and maybe there even being like a restoration in that. I thought that was fascinating. Somebody brought that up. And I kind of shared a little bit how I feel like that darkness also was like the darkness in the womb. And that there was a birthing of something that was happening during that time. And then there's a reminder that darkness is temporary. So even if it is not seen as something that's necessarily evil, we are reminded light always prevails. So the aspects of light and darkness, even if you're not looking at it as dualism, and they both play their purpose, the light does prevail. The darkness is there for its season, but it precedes the revelation, but eventually gives way through to that. So going into this week's, I really wanted to talk about light. And I was intrigued to look at light from that same aspect of, like, let's look beyond the black and the white and see what else we can find in that. So one thing, light is absolutely more than just this brightness. It is what ushers in the unveiling of what has already been. It's God's presence, his wisdom, and his revelation. But light works in harmony with darkness. It brings clarity without erasing the mystery. So light and darkness, like looking at them as not enemies, but perhaps this aspect of partners. And so darkness, it's a space for mystery, depth, and transformation. So without it, light wouldn't even have the chance to do what light does. I found that really interesting as I was thinking about that, and you can see that echoed a lot in creation. In Job 12:22, he says, he reveals deep things from darkness and brings the shadow of death into the light. And so there is this aspect even in that verse where it's partnership. It's not this light coming in and just destroying the darkness. And now, there's this beauty in this partnership. And like the night sky, it's the darkness in the night sky. In fact, when the sky is the darkest, that's when you can see just the stars, the depth of the stars, galaxies even, when it is super dark. So darkness in life often partners with light to reveal the deepest wisdom. And if you think about it with like candles and flashlights, sometimes you can't even tell if a flashlight's working if the room is light enough. You have to kind of like, put your hand over it, try to create a little bit of darkness to see. And so when you take it into a dark place, that's what reveals the power of the light in the flashlight. So I was thinking about that. I thought, So perhaps in this aspect with darkness in the world, maybe part of the reason why it is so necessary is we need that contrast in order for us to learn who we really are, who we always have been. We need to have that contrast. And that contrast is like this learning, like a playground to learn in. And then once we know it, then it is all light. But in the meantime, it's this aspect of we need that contrast. So light as presence and not superiority. Light in Scripture represents God's presence rather than a dominance over darkness. Exodus 13:21. God led Israel by a pillar of fire, signifying guidance and assurance. But he did not eradicate the darkness. He had his presence there within it. So we know that God is light, and he's also love. So when I was thinking about that, it's like you can use the different aspects of who God is to understand the other aspects. So we can understand some of the nature of light by looking at some of the nature of love. And love never uses force. It like true unconditional love, it simply cannot control. It is not capable of doing that. So in that same aspect, light can't be that way with darkness. It can't control it. It can't force its way onto it. And light, so then going into the next point, light as our identity. So this is something that we just simply are. It is not something we have to strive for. And that's actually something that when I first learned that really changed the aspect for me of what it was to be light. So like Matthew 5:14, Jesus says, "You are the light of the world," meaning that light is intrinsic. It's not earned. He is the light, and we're created in his image. And I was always taught that it was something that you had to become, or you had to have it come alive in you. Like it wasn't in some people, but it was in other people. And I have a really cool story with this where, as I was going through this, this is already something I have had this revelation already of, yes, we all are light already. But there's this idea of so we are it, and yet we are becoming it. This double aspect, and Paul kind of goes into that with a lot of different things. But I like to talk to AI when I throw around ideas like this. I just out of curiosity, and sometimes it really helps with like it's a wonderful tool to help with the process of pulling together a message super fast, because you can do research so much quicker. Like it can pull from all different sources, and you're like, I would have never even thought to go look at that. Oh, that's amazing. So I'm having this discussion with AI, and I ask it, and I hadn't really gone into this light stuff very much, but I was just curious. It just occurred to me. I think it was the Holy Spirit that, said, ask AI what it thinks about you as light versus becoming light. And I figured, well, it's probably going to get the answer that it's been fed so much that this is something you have to become. No, it immediately spit out at me, goes, it was amazing. It says, well, my perspective is that you already are light. It is something that you are, not something that it is something that you are, that all of you are. And I'm butchering probably how it said it. But, what it used to back that up is it says, you are created in the image of God, and God is light. Yeah. And I was just in shock, because and then it says, that might not be your perspective. Do you want me to, it's like, that is amazing. Like, I love that. So just even the fact that asking something like AI already gets that. It sees what is in the Bible, and it just knows that. It knows that we already are light, because we are all created in the image of the Father. who is light. He's the Father of lights. So going into that, it's like, so light exists without striving. And I was having fun thinking about that in terms of just different aspects in creation, because when I do these things, it's like I like to reflect on what he shows us all around us. And the sun just is light. It doesn't have to try to be light. Light just is. It's because of a reaction that's already happening. It just is. There's no striving. It simply is. And so we also are like that. When we're called to be light, we don't manufacture light. We actually reveal it. And so we reveal it through authenticity and presence. And this authenticity comes from us knowing who we truly are. So as we unveil that to ourselves, as we encounter the Lord in that and start to learn who we really are and walk in that true authenticity, that's where that light is revealed. And the presence, this is the presence in the moment, which is also the same thing as the presence with the Lord. And I love how Evie said that, a little while back. It's like, and so I had to just mention that. Like, that's just so beautiful how she put it. Like, you miss him when you're not remaining in the present moment, because that is where he always is. In the past, it's fear. In the future, it's worry. But right in that present moment, that's where you meet him every single time. And he'll be there in that present moment trying to lure you out of the future and the past. But as soon as you can come into that present moment, that's where you encounter him. And so when you're in that present moment, that's where you're also this light that's shining bright. You're, revealing that light that is there. And light, like I mentioned before, it's not about power or overcoming. It's about existing in the truth of who you are, in the love, and in the now, in that present moment. So knowing the truth of who you are and surrendering to love is light at work, revealing. That's how you be the light, and that is how the light shines forth and multiplies from you and around you, because it's going to the light in everything else is going to reflect back and respond back to that. So there's also a mystery in light, just like in the darkness. So we can associate darkness a lot with the mystery, but light itself holds a different kind of mystery. Exodus 34:29. God's glory was so radiant that Moses had to veil his face. So even light can be overwhelming. In 1 Timothy 6:16, God dwells in unapproachable light. So this shows that light isn't just this clarity. It contains deep wells of mystery. And you also see this in nature. Like if you look at, you're not supposed to look at the sun, but if you find yourself looking at least somewhat close to it, there's this haze where you can't, it's this mystery, this haze. You can't really identify what you're even quite looking at. The same with a candle. It fades into this haze, and yet there's something so captivating that it draws you in. Like with firelight, it's really hard to avert your gaze from it. It pulls you in, but there's this mystery in it. And so, yeah, I think there is a mystery in the light as well, but it's something different. And there is light in all of creation, since all of creation reflects God's presence. Romans 1:20 says, creation itself reveals divine truth, because light is woven into all of existence, inviting us to see God in all things. And I believe this is because since light is a part of God's essence, anything he creates is going to have a part of his genetic makeup, his essence. And so all of creation has that. It has light in it. The cosmos, the sun, moon, stars, all carry God's light very outwardly. That's a very obvious example of it. Another interesting obvious example is like bioluminescent creatures. You can actually physically see that light. But what I thought is really interesting is you find these creatures in the deepest waters or the darkest places. And it once again, like, it pairs with this idea of darkness, where it's because of the intensity of the darkness that those creatures can glow, or that they're even called and created to glow. What would be the point if those environments were full of light? We would honestly even miss that they were glowing. And nature's rhythm is really fascinating with its flow back and forth with light and darkness. And you see how, like, the plants reach for the light. And life depends on light's presence. And that natural rhythm with the light and the dark. So it's like this rhythm where we need that time of growth and that time of rest. And so if it was all just the growth, I mean, like, plants would die if they didn't actually have that opportunity to have that cycle and that rhythm. There's things that happen during that photosynthesis process in the darkness. And so the fact that light, I mean, of course, like, he created it to be this way, but light needs to give the darkness its chance. It steps back. There's this rhythm, this dance between them. And yet, I'm not really sure how that necessarily plays in with us being light, except that maybe what he's saying in that is there's a time to let it shine, and a time to, like, in that just being, because the sun just is, and in the sun just being, it never stops shining, but there's a cycle that God allows to happen. So maybe that's what that kind of is, to not be discouraged when we feel like, man, I don't think, am I shining? I don't think I am, because there doesn't seem to be a response to this. Well, you always are still shining. It just may not be being revealed on that part of, the surface of the earth, and that part in that person's life at that current time. But it will have its time. So, yeah, this kind of goes into the next point, the gentle strength of light, living without striving. Light does not fight the darkness. It fills space effortlessly. Embodying light means choosing gentleness over force, wisdom over reaction, presence over performance. Isaiah 42:3. A bruised reed he will not break, and a smoldering wick he will not snuff out. True light nurtures rather than overpowers. And true light is unshakable. It exists whether seen or unseen, moving beyond fear and anxiety into steady presence, because it knows it has nothing to prove, and its presence will ultimately reveal all things. Living as light in the world, like some practical ways to shine, because that's how he created us to be. Like, so how do we practically apply this, Lord? Even though we know it's not a striving, how do we comprehend this? So we embody light not by the striving, but by being fully present, which that is such a hard thing for adults to do, but it is so, so easy for kids. And so I think that's one of those things where, like, ask the Lord how to gently have him walk you in being more present, if that's something that you struggle with. Because he'll show you exactly, like, what works for you. For me, it changed a lot for me when I started to learn how to meditate and doing that with the Lord. And then I started kind of recognizing my thought process that would pull me out of the present and be able to intentionally come back into it. So, but getting back into, like, intentional ways to manifest light. So, like, that's a big part of it, being fully present. But the other thing is, if you know who you are as a child of the Father, and this is also a learning process too. First, you have to know that you're not identified by sin, by broken. That is not your identity, brokenness and sin. Your identity is just the most beautiful, perfect creation in the cosmos because your Father made you. And he doesn't make broken things. He doesn't make bad things. And we get this wrong sense of who our identity is. So ask him to show you how he sees you. And as he heals that and like sets your eyes into alignment with how he really sees you, it changes. And as you start to know who you really are as his child and start to get to know him in his true nature as a father, that light will definitely, you'll start to feel that being revealed to yourself. So some ways are like speaking light, words that illuminate, using words that build up rather than tear down. And honestly, all these things like speaking light and truth, they have to, like, the more that you know who you really are, the more that you're able to speak that over other people too. And so living in that authenticity and calling that out in other people too. Yes, exactly. It produces. Yes. So speak truth, the truth of who they really are, with grace and compassion, avoiding harshness. And there may be times that things need to be said in a more corrective manner. I definitely believe there's a season for all things. But in general, it's try to identify who they really are and call that out. Encourage others, being a source of hope and wisdom. Another aspect is acting in light, so serving and loving others. Acts of kindness radiate warmth. Stand up for truth without aggression. Remember, light is not about overbearing force. You know the truth, and when you know the truth, you don't have to use aggression. You understand, they'll get there. They'll understand in their own time. And forgive constantly, knowing forgiveness dispels bitterness. Seeing light, like learning to recognize God's presence in all things. That will really help you. You'll start to see the light all around you. Approach life with wonder, gratitude, and humility, acknowledging the divine beauty in ordinary moments. Those little moments, man, as you start to recognize the light in those little moments, the wonder and the awe of who he is in those little moments, it multiplies. It just multiplies. And then those little moments feel really big. Recognizing the sacredness in the people around you and honoring their worth. I think this was something that was mentioned earlier. Honoring people, recognizing their worth. Every single person is created in his image, and to like really see that. And I know we've talked about this before. But as you really practice seeing God in every individual, it's really amazing. And it takes a lot of practice. I mean, it's easy to shift out of that. But you have to remember that the things that bother you about those people, it's their brokenness. It's not the real them. And man, what a wonder it would be to actually really be able to see the real them. And they probably don't even know who the real them is. And then to be able to call that out in them and help reveal and call that light, and to be visually seen by them as well, being a part of that unveiling process. And then with money, I liked how I already had these thoughts running through my mind, so being able to pick up on it and so many things we talked about. So shifting our perspective from scarcity to abundance, light allows a mindset of hope. It is that hope that allows us to be able to see from that perspective of abundance, not scarcity. Scarcity is not manifesting the light. And yeah, I mean, there was a time where I thought, well, I'm being more practical. Like this is, but no, we always are living in abundance. And when we're living from that perspective of abundance, we are manifesting that light. And we can create light by bringing beauty into the world. We express light through art, music, storytelling, any form of creativity. And being generous also generates light. Generous with our time, our resources, with love. And, I thought that was kind of interesting. So I looked into that a little bit more, trying to figure out, am I just making that up, like applying light to all these different things? But generosity does multiply. And there is an aspect where all these characteristics, these fruit, they are light. And so that is multiplying light. And when we lead by example, living as an unshakable presence in uncertain times, that is a bright light, and that multiplies. That is this, it reveals what is in that darkness. And we can live as an unshakable presence when we really know who we are, and tapping into that and being in that present moment with the Lord. It's like, oh, okay, I'm not worried about the future. I'm not fearful about the past, because this present moment right now, your arms are around me, and I don't need to be worried. So carrying light through the darkness, we embody peace amidst uncertainty, trusting that light is still present even when unseen. We can also accept the mystery in that dark time, knowing that light does not erase darkness, but fills it with a purpose, and his presence is there in that mystery, and trust that he will reveal all things in due time. And if you're able to anchor yourself in faith rather than fear during those hard, dark seasons, don't let fear be the motivation to act and make you push light as an agenda into the situation. I gotta. No, light doesn't need to be forced. Just simply be, resting in that peace, in that presence. And that's how you carry that light through that darkness. And there definitely is. There is space for declaring it. But it's like you're declaring it out of a place, not of fear. Not of, because fear does create its own energy. And it can seem like we're using light almost as a weapon when we're motivated by fear. And light doesn't operate like that, just like love doesn't. So it's actually bringing a whole different energy. But when you're doing it from that place of presence and true authenticity, that's when you're able to use that light in that darkness. So manifesting light is less about doing and more about being, living in alignment with truth, wisdom, and connection with our Father. So in conclusion, we are light, and light is everywhere. It's not something that we have to chase. It's not something it is something that we simply allow to be revealed. We just come into agreement with it. And yet even there's a grace, I think, even when we don't come into agreement with it being revealed, because we don't quite understand that aspect of ourselves yet, there still will be times where it's like, oh, wow. Oh, I felt that. That felt different, Lord. And it's all a growing, learning process. But instead of striving to shine, we simply exist as presence, wisdom, and connection with the Father. Light is woven into all things, the cosmos, nature, and quiet moments of reflection. They all reflect that divine radiance. In Revelations 22:5, in eternity, light is complete, and darkness, as any kind of a separation, ceases to exist. So we know that in due time, all things will be illuminated. And once again, I want to reiterate, it's not because that darkness is evil. It is because it has all been revealed. And we are a part of that. So yeah, what are your guys' thoughts, questions, comments?
Ronnie's a little jealous because I've come up 3 times already. No, great teaching. Yeah, I didn't catch the first part. We're planning to go back and see that, but this is really good. What came to mind when you were sharing about being the light, there's a vision that God gave me about 4 years ago, and I was sharing it with our groups. But what he said is, you already carry that spiritual light, you know. The believer does, but he said, it's going to go beyond that. And he said, what's going to happen is you're going to carry a physical aura of light around you. And that's to draw in the pre-believer. Because who's going to look at somebody with light shining all around them and not go up and ask, where does that light come from? And he said, be ready. You know, you may not have a long time, but be ready with an answer. Share the love of Christ and how that light came into you so that that same light might enter them. So, excellent. Thank you.
I love that. Yeah.
Way to end at 8:31. That was pretty good. Awesome. So if anybody needs to leave, feel free. So my favorite psalm is Psalm 139 is probably my favorite scripture. And it's interesting to me because you were talking about our light shining for others, you know, and that was kind of what Tim was saying. But in Psalms 139, 7 through 12, it says, is there any place I can go to avoid your spirit, to be out of your sight? If I climb to the sky, you're there. If I go underground, you're there. If I flew on morning wings to the far western horizon, you'd find me in a minute. You're already there waiting. Then I said to myself, oh, he even sees me in the dark. At night, I'm immersed in light. It's a fact. Darkness isn't dark to you. Night and day, darkness and light, they're all the same to you. And so I just love that because, you know, it's a true thing about us, you know, and it's a true thing that even when we are, you know, doing, I don't know, whatever we want to call it, sin, rebellion, whatever, he is absolutely 100% with us. And there's nowhere really we can go where God is not present. And anyway, so I just thought so everybody's got through. You can be in darkness and still be in light.
Since we're not really asking questions, we're making declarations. I remember way back when, before I was born again, the church I went to kept saying, may your light shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven, which is Matthew 5:16. That's a good one.
That is a good one.
Many times is this? You know, it's awesome to see what God is doing in this body. You know, through that teaching as well as last week, it's like he's, from what my perspective is that what he's been teaching me over the last couple of years of solidifying who I am in him. And it's so good to see it here and among you know, and he's establishing who you are and bringing it so gentle and loving and caring and in such a lovely way that it's just beautiful to witness it, you know. So It's great what God is doing. Well done.
Yeah, and just, I was just thinking about, it's funny what seems obvious to each of us seems like it will be to everyone else, that sometimes we don't say the things that are so obvious to us. So what just popped when my wonderful husband was talking was just how obvious, at least it is to me, with the words you're bringing last week to this week, the contrast between dark and light, and that you need both and that it's in, and this is what you're talking about, but in the context of the darkness, light shines. And that's actually the threshold that you guys are walking through right now. And that the darkness of the hibernation is setting up the contrast of the light that you guys are walking in. And they need to go hand in hand. Yeah, because it's, then you don't take it for granted, and there's those foundations, and it's precious what you're walking in to steward. And so we bless that and honor that.
Thank you guys so much. I really enjoyed going through and learning a lot more about this myself as well.
I got a word of encouragement for that lady up there on the left of our screen. Shelley. I got a word for you, and this is a word that I wanted to share with you last week, but when I turned around, you were gone. So you're heading out the door. So I heard when I walked into this building last week, and my eyes, as I walked up, my eyes hit you sitting on the chair there. And I heard Father say to me, tell her I love her time when she spends time with me. Tell her I love her intercession. So in the darkness, on your bed, when you pray and cry out to him, and when you talk to him, he loves that. So I just want to encourage you to keep going, and Father hears every word you say. All right, bless you.